Have you ever had to hold a car boot sale for footballers? Because I have, and it's a lot more difficult than you'd imagine. Now, normally, this is the part where I would say that we have a £50 million transfer budget and we're trying to spend that over on stream right now, having a lovely time. And that is still the case. However, there is something very important that we have to deal with first, and you are not going to want to miss that. I'll be upfront with you. You see, a Hungarian side that isn't us has reached yet another European final. But because of the timings and the way things worked out with the last stream, we weren't able to actually watch the final game. So we're going to be doing that at the very start of today's stream before we even think about getting into any transfer shenanigans. Watching it on comprehensive too, so it might take a little while. I won't tell you anything more about that. You can stick around to find out more about that in a second, or join us over on stream, of course, for the match. But needless to say, it's going to be a banger, especially as there is the opportunity for a different Hungarian side to win a European trophy in this save before we do. But the VODs of all the streams can, of course, be found on the second channel, linked in the description. The videos go out a day after each stream. But for now, season 11 of Building a Nation with MTK Budapest was setting up to be one of transition. Last year, we had finally conquered Portugal and taken 6th place, and with it, the extra European spot that we so craved. But while we were waiting the full year to see the fruits of our labour and actually see that extra European spot, this year was mostly supposed to be about closing the gap to France and Germany. And boy, what a gap it was. The plan was to put as big a dent in it as we physically could to hopefully start closing them down and breathe down their neck over the next couple of seasons. But before any of that, let's talk about outs, because we have raked in £100 million in player sales this season, and that means some big players have left. But the first of those players was a less important player, and that was Joe Medinger, a player that we really signed from Chelsea with the idea of flipping him, and that is exactly what we did. We paid £12 million for him a couple of seasons ago, flipped him to Arsenal for £24.5 million. It actually has some clauses that could see it rise. I think for a player that was just never really settled in here, doubling our money on him in 2 seasons was a really good deal for us, and it allowed us to just offset some money, because we were in a danger of not being able to spend anything, because our budget was basically the same as our bank balance. We then also finally found a move for Job Bellingham. He's been a good servant to us over the past 3 seasons, but we knew that someone would have to leave from that sort of roaming playmaker role, and Job, being the oldest of the bunch, certainly fit the bill for that. I've just noticed that he's got an England cap. Did he get an England cap after he went to Feyenoord? That's very lucky. That's incredible. Man moves to Feyenoord and immediately gets an England cap. That's such a dodge from us, bear in mind, because had he got that cap while he was here, his wage would have gone up by like 4 times. So what an insane bullet dodge that was. And we got £19.5 million for him for a player that we signed for free 3 years ago. So we really have made some good money over these the last couple of transfers. Next was an out that we really didn't want to have to make, but were put in a position where we had no choice. Yoshitaka Nakanishi, the £3.1 million signing from Fukuoka Blaze, who's been at the club for 6 years now, and really we had our hopes in him being a long-term successor at this club. He had loads of caps for Japan. That was always the plan, until we had a random issue in January. And that was that at the start of the January transfer window, I got notifications in my inbox from 6 of our starting 11 players, all saying that they were going to consider their options at the end of their contracts. Bear in mind, some of them had 3.5 years left on their contracts. What is that nonsense? Now, the best thing about that is usually, and this is a pro tip for anybody, if you get that news article come through and you can discuss it with a player, always click the one that says something about ambition. That usually 99% of the time works. I've only had it fail 1 time when the player went, no, I don't care about that. I want to leave for some reason. And unfortunately, it was Yoshi. So we were left in no choice, but we had to sell him because otherwise he was going to leave for free. So eventually, on the final day of the January transfer window, he went to Dortmund for £33.5 million. Dortmund have really become that team I sell players to when I just need some cash. I think that is the 4th player that Dortmund have bought off of us for 20 million plus. Except make that 5, because we also sold the Juan Alvarado for £32.5 million. They just love selling and buying centre-backs from us. It's beautiful. And do you remember a few seasons ago when we signed a player called Redacted? Well, every now and then we get a question about him, and it's obviously hard for me to talk about this right now, but I did explain it on stream, so I'll let you see that now. I don't know if I should even be able to show him on screen, honestly. I'll go full face cam. So basically, the situation with Redacted is that he was caught f***ing a swan, and butt plug shaped like a banana, and we were all a little bit strange about that. Coming out of a brothel with his grandma, and yeah, that's basically the story. But let's talk about who we actually have brought in, because I think with the new scouting method we've been working on over the course of this season, it's the first season that we've been using it fully. You'll have seen the video about it a couple of days ago. If you haven't, then I would suggest checking it out, because I really, really like it. First few players you're going to see weren't signed using that method. They were just players from before that were sort of hangovers from the old style of scouting. And the first of those was Rodrigo Rafa Benitez from Taquare, 275 grand. Brilliant signing for us, I would say. Honestly, he's already had 21 appearances this season out on loan at Ferencvaros straight away, and that's a big team to be going straight in at. Probably one of the best signings we've made all season. Haris Živković, Bosnian well, not international, but he will be at one day. He's only 17 years old, signed for 800 grand from Zalesnia. He's already worth nearly 20 million pounds, and what a season he's had. Only scored 9 goals, admittedly, out on loan at Halidash this season, but more on them in a bit. Point being, though, he's developing like an absolute rocket, and I cannot wait to see what this player is capable of if he carries on developing at this rate. Then one of our biggest outlays of the entire summer, Labros Kontovrakis, Greek international striker. We needed someone to back up Castillo, because we just really had nothing beyond him right now. And when we saw Labros with these attributes, even without the wonderful potential ceiling, we thought he's the perfect striker to do that job for us, because he's the complete package. He's incredibly fast, great finishing, composure, great mentals. He's got an okay left foot, or right foot rather, which is solid. He's just a very solid backup striker. And so far, well, this season, you can see 19 goals for us in 30 appearances, but only 15 starts as well. He just takes opportunities when he finds them. And I'm super, super pleased for Labros. And he has been more important than you will know. Well, you'll see how important he's been for us at times this year later on. Then another sort of random punt that turned out to be quite a good signing for us. Mario Mihail came in for 2.5 million from Lokomotiva. The main reason we signed him was he looked a little bit okay. Potential was much worse when we had him initially scouted him, but we wanted to bring him back to Hungary because we thought, hey, he could be a future Hungarian international, and he gendered in a different nation. Well, actually, technically, yeah, he had actually as things go. But now that he's here, he's developing at a rate of knots, and I think there's only a matter of time before he gets into that full Hungarian national team squad. Next comes the first of a set of players that we found using this sort of new scouting method. The first of which is Ole Bergvold. You'll notice how very young he is. He's only just turned 17. 5.5 million in total. So you'll notice with a lot of these newer fees that they look a bit higher, and that's because we've managed to backload a load of money in terms of appearances for us. So a lot of them won't ever reach that sort of thing. So it does allow us to at least end up paying a little bit less on the front side of things, but it makes the fees look bigger, essentially. But yeah, Bergvold, solid player. He was originally 5-star potential. I still think there's a quality player in here, and if we could get him alone now that he's turned 17, maybe he can start to recoup a little bit. Then we have Robert Olsen. You'll notice, again, he was another 5-star potential guy when he joined us so far, but they were so young that they've just taken a little while to adapt. I think both of them can get back to that, and it might also be due to some other players that have signed that have pushed that down a little bit. But again, I think that he's got incredible attributes for someone who's only 17, particularly that AMC role. But next, probably my favourite signing of the entire season. That's right. Those of you that watched my last save will recognise this name, Mihai Alacu. 16-year-old Romanian, picked up from Dinamo Bucuresti, 1.5 million pounds, but look at the state of him. He is going to be a worldie. Now, we had Alacu in the last save. He was a worldie there as well. He's a face in the game for those of you unaware, but it's just crazy that he's turned out to be this good in both saves. I think he could actually be better in this one. He's got future everything, honestly. I think eventually he's the successor to Navarro one day. That's how good he can be. The one thing about him that we don't particularly like is the injury prone, and he has had some injury issues, but he's already played 6 league games for us this season as well at the age of 16. So him and Zoltan, really the future of this team, I would say. And it's really cool to see that we brought him in so early, but the mentals are mental. The last signing of the window is actually the most expensive one as well. Lucas Martins Santos, or LMS as we've been calling him, 13.5 million pounds. And looking at the star rating, you think, well, for a 23-year-old Brazilian, you've probably overpaid a little bit there. And to an extent, I agree with you. However, we were really signing him purely on attributes. With the fact that we'd lost those defenders and we had all this extra money floating around, we did need to stack the team a little bit just to bring someone else in the meantime. 6'2", excellent jumping reach, driven personality, great physicals, good on both feet, excellent tackling. He kind of just hits all the temp poles perfectly. He's been nothing but fantastic whenever he's been called into the first team action. And that's why it's really useful to have players around like this who may not be the fancy star rating chiefs, but they've got the attributes that you need for the team. And I feel like LMS is going to be such a hero for us over the next 5 years of his contract. He's probably going to rack up, my guess is probably 70 or 80 appearances in that time, and he'll probably put in a solid 8 out of 10, a solid 7 to 8 out of 10 in virtually every game. And that's the kind of consistency that you need. And now to the league, where it was very, very straightforward indeed, actually. We eventually ended up on a 52-game winning run domestically, which was mad. We were so good, especially over the first sort of 25 games or so of this season. In the end, of course, it did come to an end there with a draw and 2 defeats towards the very end of the season. Bit of a shame, really. We actually, I think, won our first 28 league games this year, and we're really on for that perfect season, but then we dropped some points, then a defeat happened, and we actually ended up losing on the final day as well. You'll note, Ferencváros obviously second place, but Kisvárda, third place. They've had a wonderful season. Third place, Champions League football for them next season, which, let's be honest, is most likely going to be Europa League groups in the end. They're not likely to get into the actual Champions League group stages with us, but Ferencváros, they'll be guaranteed a group stage spot. And you'll see there in fourth place, Halidash. Incredible scenes for them to come fourth this season with Haris Zivkovic in there. However, what you will note there is that they're in the Conference League while Újpest in fifth place got Europa League. So what happened there, and this is news to anyone that watched the streams as well, because this happened off stream. Last season, obviously, we played a rested side against Újpest in the cup final so that they didn't lose morale ahead of their Conference League final. We lost the game, which was fine, and that ended up getting them into Europe last year. This year, of course, none of those issues were relevant to us because neither of us were in Europe at this point. Spoiler alert, I suppose. I played a full-strength side in the cup final, and we still bloody lost them. 4-3. So Budapest went back-to-back Hungarian Cups, and as a result, actually pipped them into the Europa League. But that's enough of that. It's all about Europe now. We have a lot of stuff to discuss with Europe, especially as some of the stuff that you're already aware of. Got off to the worst possible start. Away at Anfield, Rafael Luis, Sam Ingram. We got a red card in this game with Velázquez as well. Created nothing, and a horrible start to our Champions League group. Really not what you want. But then things got even worse for us as we had to rely on an 80th minute equaliser for Brandon Silva to allow us to draw with Celtic. A game that I feel like we should have won. Well, we should be winning it, obviously. I still think on the night we were the better side, but my God, we started appallingly. Thankfully, we then remembered exactly who we are as we went to Lazio and humped them 5-0. A hat-trick for Castillo, Abdul Nabi and Yeboah scoring goals as well. Absolutely fantastic performance. Just need a bit more of that. And boy, did we get it as we went away to Villarreal and, well, we were even better in this game. Just couldn't seem to hit the target enough, sadly. But a 3-0 trashing, Yeboah, Castillo and Melero with the goals. Castillo missed a penalty in the 19th minute and then proceeded to miss another penalty in the 17th minute, hence the XG being so high. Man missed 2 penalties in the same game. He's allergic to hat-tricks, but still an absolutely fantastic result. And we have played 3 of our first 4 matches, at least, away from home, I suppose. But then we had a home game against City and lost 1-0 because Erling Haaland. They were just, I would say, slightly the better side. So I think 1-0 is probably still good value, but we could have had a goal in this game. And then it got even worse as we went away to Portugal. Classy neck, and Stanislav Suhi, our former player, scoring a brace against us, sunk us, basically. Goals from Navarro and Seri weren't enough as we went down 3-2 at Benfica as well. Thankfully, we put on the mother of all displays at home against Club Brugge after Christmas in one of our 2 remaining home games. Castillo, Brandon Silva and Velázquez with the goals, but we could have had 5 or 6, honestly, here. This was a hammering. And that's exactly what we did do against Sevilla. 6-0 thumping of Sevilla. Bear in mind, they were above us in the league table at this point. I think they were like 7th, and we hammered them 6-0. A hat-trick for Castillo, Melero, Hurley and Darla with the goals. I mean, we were 6-0 up with 15 minutes to go. There could have been more. But before I show you the Champions League group, I need to talk to you a little bit about Ferencváros, because they did something this season that I wasn't expecting. They beat them 3-1 in the home game. Aguilar and Prestiani with the goals. Zungu got one back for Porto, for Sporting rather, in there, but that gave them a chance at actually getting into the group stage, which they only went and took by only losing 1-0 in the second leg. So Ferencváros joined us in the Champions League group stage this season. A group stage that ended up finishing like this for us. You can see 15th place in the end with those 2 late wins made a huge difference. We were on 7 points after our first 6 games and in real danger of not qualifying at all. Luckily though, by getting 15th, of course, that meant we got top half, which was really important for us to get a better draw. But you'll see, Ferencváros 24th. They qualified for the knockouts in the first season of them being in the Champions League. They beat Slavia Prague and Dinamo Zagreb, which was incredible, but it was the draws against Rome, or Stade Rennais rather, and Ajax away that did the business. Lost to Spurs, Barcelona, Bayern and Chelsea. You know what? It doesn't even matter. We'll come back to them in a minute, but let's talk about us in the knockouts. As our reward for that 15th spot, unfortunately, was Spurs. Luckily, we came up with a bloody good result. Castillo gave us the lead just before half-time, and then Navarro added another one before Garnacho got one back for Spurs. We were ironically much better in the home leg against Spurs. Melero gave us the lead in this game as he was running the show, and he's been fantastic in Europe yet again. Julian Derenvel actually got Spurs an equaliser in this, a very undeserved one. So I'd say over 2 legs, we were definitely the better side and did get through to the round of 16, which is usually where we tend to get to and occasionally go a little bit further. But this was going to always be a tough one as we drew Manchester City. We just love English sides, apparently, and we'd already lost to them in the Champions League this season. But we put on the mother of all shows for the home fans. Melero gave us the lead after 35 minutes, but he was a boss. 9.0 in this game. He ran the show. It was incredible. He was making runs. He was playing through the centre behind Castillo in this game instead of off the wide areas because of some suspensions and stuff. And he was just killing it in that role. Absolutely fantastic performance from him. Could have had more goals, set up goals for other people. We probably could have won this game 2 or 3-0. And that's the worst thing, because you know when you're playing against someone like City that you need to take your chances when they're there. We had no expectations that we were going to get anything from the Etihad. So I decided to take things into my own hands with an intimidation strategy. City, you've been bad boys, and I'm here to spank you with the end of my belt. That's the wrong end. You don't want to use that end. That's just... There you go. That's what we're ready for. That's what's coming their way over the next 90 minutes. A spanking. And well, the magic actually happened. Barella gave Manchester City the lead very early on after a positive start from us as well. Long range effort, which is basically what they'd done over the entire tie, just shooting from range. But then things went a bit bad for us as Fernandes was sent off after 34 minutes. The tie was level. We were down to 10 men, and I just stuck to my guns with the tactic and said, you know what, we've got something here. Let's just try and stick with it. And well, at halftime we made a slight change, brought on Lavros Koldovrakis, and in the second half, Malero's free kick hit the bar, came back to Koldovrakis, Kontavrakis, and he headed it home in the 69th minute to give us what would prove to be the winning goal in the tie as we knock Manchester City out to get to the quarterfinals. We drew Manchester United because we cannot avoid English sides, and now it's been narrowed down to Manchester. And oh boy, did things get spicy. One of those results. Every now and then you'll get a game like this. This was a weird one, and for once I'm going to give myself a little bit of credit on this one because we took the lead very early on through Castillo, and the rest of the first half was particularly bland at this point, and not a lot had really happened. Malero had a pretty poor day, but I made a couple of changes and I moved Malero back to that central role behind the striker again. I made a couple of changes as well to bring Kontavrakis out on the right-hand side to give us a little bit of extra quality out in the wide areas, and we killed them over the first 15 minutes of the second half. Kontavrakis firstly scoring a goal, then we won a penalty, which was I think Kontavrakis again, then moments later Yakubu scored another one to make it 4-0. United then changed their system and plugged all the gaps at that point, but we were already 4-0 up and cruising at that point, so had a beautiful chance at qualifying for the next round. Absolutely superb scenes from us there. We then went to Old Trafford, and again at half-time I was really noticing that we were struggling in a few areas, so I brought on Kontavrakis again at half-time. Within 32 seconds of the kickoff, we'd kept the ball, put it over the top, Kontavrakis was in, 1-0, 5-0 on aggregate in the end, and I think we could arguably deserve to win this game as well. We would draw Bayern Munich though. Very, very tough. Unfortunately, we just couldn't handle Bayern in the first leg. We created very little in this game. They got an 89th minute winner, which was the worst thing. Weirdly, the game is saying that they played this system. They didn't. They very much played a very different system that we'd not really come up against before, and it just completely stymied us. And that was then compounded, unfortunately. We started off this game so bloody well. We were creating stuff. For the first 17 minutes, they were playing a much more normal system. Things were good. But then Abdul Nabi decided to two-foot someone after 17 minutes, and it completely killed us. It really did. I feel like if we didn't get that red card, we were right in this game. We were dominating the early stages of this one and were creating chances, really knocking on the door. And just from that moment onwards, other than the goal, we created nothing. And it's such a shame. You know what? A semi-final appearance is very good for us. Shows we're moving in the right direction. So, Ferencváros, what happened with them? Well, they drew Porto in the next round and actually got a 1-1 draw against them with Gavric scoring the late goal. And you're thinking to yourself now, hang on a minute. Surely Ferencváros aren't the other Hungarian side that are in a European final? Because I didn't specify which, did I? No, they're not. Unfortunately, that's the wrong screen. There's less productive there, but they sadly went out only on penalties though, getting draws against Porto in both games and only narrowly going out in the knockout round. I was very, very impressed with them. They could have actually snuck through. I would start to expect them to be signing some really good players and start to really strengthen over the coming seasons, and this is where it gets very exciting. But that does end the Champions League runs for our sides, but think of the coefficient points with them actually doing stuff. So let's talk Europa League, and this year it was Újpest. They were our Europa League candidates, having done so well in the Conference League last year, getting to the final, losing it in horrible circumstances. It is what it is. This year, though, a much difficult test, which bugger me, they passed with flying colours. Third place in the Europa League, 20 points, 6 wins and 2 draws. They were killing it. They were finishing above Real Sociedad, Newcastle. Only conceded 2 goals across their 8 games in the group stages as well. Absolutely miserly. So that, of course, gave them a bye for the next round. And then they drew against Legia Warszawa. 14th spot Legia Warszawa. You wouldn't expect particularly big things from them. And then they went and beat Újpest 3-0 in Poland. However, they had just knocked out Konyaspor right prior to that as well, which is hilarious. Previous champion of the Europa Conference League too. So it gave Újpest an insane mountain to climb. It was just not a mountain they were capable of climbing. They did win the match though through Radojicic. The problem with Újpest is they don't score a lot, so when they concede, it's a bit of an issue for them, which now leaves you thinking it has to be someone from the Conference League then. So let's talk about it, because yet again, our sides got relatively easy draws and were able to coast their way very comfortably into the group stages, and I feel pretty confident about that most years now with these sides. Haladash next year on the fence about it, but I feel like most teams, unless they get a horrible draw against an English side in the last playoff round, they're usually okay. Now then, so here's how things went. Kijvara, 17th spot, didn't do particularly well and had to really dig themselves out of a hole to even qualify for things in the end. Did beat Tromsø away from home and Sheriff Tiraspol. A few draws against Lille, Hajduk Split and Antalyaspor were good, and they lost to Maribor, which wasn't particularly ideal either. And then Molfehova, not amazing from them either, only 2 points for them. Scoopy and Olympiacos were their results. Not fantastic, seeing them 16th and 17th. First things first, Espanyol 2, Molfehova 0 in the first leg, not particularly ideal. And then Kijvara lost at home against Red Star, and we were very concerned about our coefficient at this point. Then it only got worse for Molfehova as they were dumped out by Espanyol. They did win the second leg, but the red card just did them no favours. But you'll see, 3-1 victory away for Kijvara. Christian Leon, Barwick and Diego with the goals, beating Red Star Belgrade in the Maracanã. What a result that is to push themselves through to the next round. As they then drew 1-1 at home against Lille, and we thought, again, if they're going to beat the French side, they're going to have to do it at home. They didn't. But then it didn't matter as they went to France and won 3-0. Barwick, Christian Leon and Diego doing the business again, which then I think led them to draw Midtjylland. And then they hammered them 4-1 in the home game. Matos, Santos, Barwick and Merla with the goals this time, pretty much sliding them through. Still had time though to go to Denmark and win the second leg as well through a penalty just to get those extra coefficient points. That then led them to Lech Poznan, where a 0-0 draw at home with meanwhile Roma absolutely hammering Olympiacos in the other leg gave us a lot of pause for thought, but it needn't matter because yet again Matos with the goal gave Kijvara a 1-0 victory, and they will face Roma in the Conference League final, which is what we're watching over on stream right now. I need to update the name fix again because I don't want them being called Capital One. I know it's not Capital One. We've been calling them Capital One. So Kizvada into the Conference League final. Second straight season with a Hungarian side in the final. Mad scene. So what has all that done for coefficient? Oh, baby. 20.5 points. We've got more points this season than we did last year by 0.8, and way more than we got the season that we got to the Champions League final, which is mad. And you'll also note just how close they are to Italy and that top 2 spot, which gets you an extra place, and we can still get it. Here's how this works. Because Milan lost the Europa League final to Leipzig, that means that if Kizvada pull off an absolute miracle and are able to beat Roma in the final, they will get given 0.4 points. And I think they get a little bit on top of that for winning it as well. And that will be enough for Hungary to leapfrog Italy into second this season. And that means you get an extra Champions League spot or something for next season. You get some kind of bonus for the Champions League, I think, next year by having that extra team. That's obviously only for the yearly stats, not for the overall one. Is somehow we've managed to overtake France. We've caught up to France in one season and overtaken them. We've come from so far back this year. I think in this season alone, we've gained nearly 10 points on France, which is utterly mad because you look at this little drop off here, combine it with that, ridiculous season from us there to go 5th. So that's kind of mad. And we're still now only 2.2 points behind 4th place Germany. Hungary are on the rise, my friends. If we can have an okay season next year that kind of matches this, then that'll be fine because we're going to gain points on them. Well, actually, they'll gain points on us. But then we've got a 15.2 and a 13.3 coming our way after that. And I think that's how we get top 4. This was our youth intake. A couple of guys that are actually okay, but it was E-rated all round, and they're okay. I can't even. The reason we signed Paul Johnston is because you use Kittian and Nivisian. You have to really at that point. Best players from the bunch. There's Babokshi. He's okay. And then there's Komloshi. Again, they're solid players, resolute personality too. But we have still made Emmett a bit of an ultimatum again, like we did several seasons ago. Basically, next year we want a 4-star player or 2 3.5-star players like this. If he doesn't produce them, then he's going to be replaced with either Todd Cantwell or James Milner. Because why not, eh? Emmett, got to keep him on his toes. We need something. Stats-wise, Castillo, 49 goals. Ridiculously good season from him. Possibly could have had a few more, but he's still above his XG, which is what matters. Navarro, always the second choice goal scorer there too. Kontavrakis with 19 in all comps. Malero with only 15 and only 10 assists this year, which is a bit surprising. Hurley, 7 goals, still underperformed there. 10 assists though, which is solid. Brandon Silva, 10 goals and 15 assists. He actually was the highest assister on the team this year. So Silva's lost that consistency, lost the bad consistency now that he's got a bit older, and he's really turning into a prime player. Quickly to the loan farm as well. You can see we've got some very high quality players still on loan. It's 114 at the moment. It was 118, but a few players have had their contracts sort of go a little bit haywire this year. Top scorer for the loan farm is Awono this season for Molfehova with 30, but Tiquinho in the second tier, 29 goals. Radojic with another 27 there for Budapest. Brilliant season. No Papa Fay really on it this year. He's been properly phased out of the Budapest team. Might need to get him back from his loan spell. Financially, well, things look bloody fantastic. 110 million in the bank, 40 million pound transfer budget. We can actually safely go and spend a load of it. Fully expect us to dump 30 to 40 million pounds into players over the course of this summer. Like 5 million here, 6 million here to really stack out this team with the next generation of absolute worldies. But before any of that, we have the situation with Kizvada, and that's what they'll be doing right now. I don't think they're going to do very well against Capital One. They're a credit card company. What are we supposed to do? Like, I think they're going to struggle against a team with the quality of Roma. To win 7-0 in the semi-final, they're going to have to put up a mighty fight. So, if you have enjoyed this video, then drop a like. That'd be fabulous. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. Stream on Twitch. You know what to do. We go over there. I'll see you guys in a bit. Hold your gun. Capybara. Bye-bye.